Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon to those that are on the East Coast and morning for those that are in Central Standard Time. It's great to see you today. And my name is Michael Johnston. On behalf of IPDAY, I'd like to welcome you to our Tech Tuesday webinar today. So today we are going to talk about mastering Microsoft Tables. And this is going to be a discussion about harnessing the power of data organization for us and our abilities to effectively create data and tables to measure the success of our students as we prolong through academic periods and timelines. So I'm super excited about bringing this discussion session today for everyone present. And we've had some great attendance from those in the past, and I've really appreciated the opportunities to have discussions with people that have reached out to us even in between the sessions that we've presented. So this is going to be a great opportunity for us today to talk about ways that we can organize data and work with reports coordinators and the programmers, or even if you don't have that ability, to help create some of the data yourself so you can replicate outcome measures that you would expect to see about your students that are in your program. So I'm looking forward to this. Again, my name is Mike Johnston. I love this type of webinar because this is going to be an interactive webinar. I appreciate the opportunities to allow people to ask questions and engage in discussion. So if there's ever any type of question that you have, always feel free to write it in the chat. I am monitoring the chat here and we are looking at them consistently, and I don't mind while we're in the presentation. If someone sees something that they just don't understand or something that I can answer quickly, I appreciate that, and I can often step in and then respond. So that way it's relevant to the time that the question's asked. So if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat. This is a recorded session, so this is archived on our IPDAY website, and this recording will be available within 48 hours of this session being completed today. So looking forward to that as well. This is going to be an interactive data session. So we are going to be working simultaneously in a Excel document that you're able to download and be able to access live. And we will be working back and forth between this PowerPoint and this Excel document that has been posted online, and the link is now in the chat. So for those that want to take a second and download, please go ahead and do so. The data file that you're going to access is going to be in an XLSX format. So that's a traditional Excel format. This will be a something you can use, you can keep, you can do it again. So if you feel like you need to go through and practice it another time, you can do that as well. And this will be available on the website. So go ahead and download that. If you're someone that likes just to reflect and watch, feel free to do that as well. If you like to actively participate, go ahead and do that. All of the formulae and the strategies we're going to use today are actually embedded in both the Excel and the PowerPoint presentation. You're going to see some formulae that I've developed for you, that I've put in here, that people will reach out to me and ask quite frequently, whether it's discussing a hierarchy or whether we have to categorize a field. I've put those calculations in there, and I'm going to show you how you can augment them to update your Excel table if you develop something like this with your organization. And again, the goal today is to be able to develop a tool, a data set. And we're going to learn actually over several different Tech Tuesdays to update and work and develop several data sets that you can use to measure your student success outcomes. So when you download that, this file is going to look something like this, and you're going to see that on this Excel, we're going to have a couple different fields here, and we're going to have a couple different tables. As you can see, they are listed below, and they're chronological. So in here, you're going to note that if we work through a outcome in one of these data tables, I have always updated that outcome for you. So if you ever feel that you fell behind, or if you were not able to catch something that I put in there, do not worry. It does not mean you cannot advance to the next phase of this presentation. Absolutely. We will be more than happy to drop that download link in there for you. So Joseph, if you could do that, that would be fantastic for our colleague. Thank you so much. And don't worry. So long story short, if you missed something, or if you feel that there was a part of this that was just not something that you got, Don't worry about it because I've done it for you, and everything is built in a chronology. So that way we can advance consistently, and you will probably get whatever we're doing on the next data table. And that's how this is going to be an asset. So there's a username, and you can't download that. I'm so sorry to hear about the troubles that you're having. Um, let me think about that. I'm going to ask that our technical colleague on this call, if he could respond, Joseph, to the username for this, that would be great. I don't know if you can do that in chat, but either way, I will make sure that we get a copy of this to you, Lenore, and thank you for bringing that up. I apologize for that inconvenience, but I bet it's a small little glitch there. So, Joseph, if you could assist and strategize to make sure Lenore can get that, we'd appreciate that. But again, if anyone else is not able to get this, okay, fantastic. So we have a strategy for that. Much appreciated. So if anyone, again, if has have any questions, I can monitor both at the same time. And this gives us a lot of opportunity for conversations because I love talking about this. I love being able to help individuals that are either working at a district, at a college, at a technical organization. We've had people that have popped on from nonprofits that have just been curious. So it's been great to meet this type of community. And absolutely, Diane, we will ask Joseph to work with you as well. And thank you, Joseph, for being so willing to work with our colleagues across the state. So again, that's going to be the strategy going forward here. So we're going to work in both the Excel and in the PowerPoint presentation. So again, in summary, I'm really excited for this opportunity and looking forward to working with each and every one of you on this project together. And that's what I consider this as a project. And one of the biggest struggles that people have spoken to me about in my career history, working with data and working with adult education, is the ability to acquire data in a way that is relevant to you and your purposes, the ability to communicate the need and the definitions to someone that has to program and often create code or calculated fields that is an interpretation of the way they understand the meaning of the definition of the data, and that sometimes can create a barrier as well. So we're going to talk about that in this discussion too. One of the goals that I see here is that I try to replicate and create data sets that have to deal with industry standards and key indicators of student success. So for us, it's important to look at common fields, and we're going to look at a lot of these fields today, but we're not going to create all of them. We're not going to go over all of them because we only have an hour, but we are going to advance together so we understand it. There's going to be some interesting outcomes, and we're going to talk about a student's age. We're going to talk about a date of birth. We're going to talk about different formats for a date of birth. There's a whole slew of things that we're going to talk about today that relate to the ability to evaluate our outcomes. And sometimes these fields are difficult for individuals to understand. And that's okay because it's complex. I give it that some of the most complex data we see is with adult education, but the more we discuss it and the more we talk about it together, the better we can do. So we're going to talk about reporting and analytics, and the ability for us to forecast outcomes is going to be something that we're going to assist in here today. But again, it's not just going to be just this one webinar. We're going to have a couple that we're going to build on together to assist us in a lot of these automations. And that's going to lead us into one of our upcoming Tech Tuesday, the ability to automate some of this. So that way you're not doing it over and over and over in every Excel and every report that you get. So here we're going to also look at the ability to analyze the data trends that are in the data that you're receiving. Small things that sometimes fall under the radar, like if you have a report and you see in a report that has students, the ability to check the number of students that are in that report, does that actually reflect the population that are enrolled in your programs? Is the ability for you to look at their gender or their race? Is that something that's easily accessible for you to validate? Because again, in order to populate in outcomes at the NRS level, those are some important fields that you cannot not have. So we're going to talk about the data trends and the data structures together, but then also strategies you can use to work with reports writers and programmers to build these reports with you. And I bet you that many of them have a lot of experience working with student level data, but adult education often has some small little tweaks to the way the data can be interpreted. So we're gonna talk about strategies we can use to working with your programmers and working with your reports writers to build these data sets together. And then lastly, we want to be able to confirm outcomes. And I think one of the more the larger opportunities that organizations have is being able to predict outcomes compared to what is actually being reported on behalf of you and your organizations and your student success. So that's going to be a strategy, a validation strategy we're going to talk about today, and we're going to enter into that conversation at the very end. So in high-level overview, we're going to talk about organizing data, augmenting some data to reflect ability for us to predict outcomes, the ability for us to discuss and strategize data definitions with your reports writers, and then for us to look at the subject matter expertise and relate that to being able to predict outcomes and then match that to what's being sent to the Department of Education on your behalf. So all of that is going to be part of this discussion today. Calculated fields and coding, do not get overwhelmed with it. We're going to give you the code and ways to manipulate code. It's going to look a little scary, but together we're going to work through it, and it's not going to be so bad. We're going to be able to work through some codes that some people have said to me, hey, Mike, my group can't code for it. Our enterprise doesn't have that ability to code for this. And I'll give a great common outcome: age as of a certain date. As we see that the age of a student could be different at the beginning of an academic period or semester, the middle of an academic period, at a census time standpoint, at the end of an academic period or semester. So age is actually a tough one, a tough calculation and coding experience for a lot of different coders. And some organizations could be limited just to the ability to calculate age at a consistent time. And then some people will say, Mike, we report the age of the students at the NRS level when we look at our NRS tables. And I say, you are correct. And they're like, how do I know which age to use? Do I use the age at the beginning of the semester, at the middle of the semester, at the end of the semester? I always recommend in some situations to be consistent. So if you are consistent in the way that it's calculated every single time, then you will be safe. Reflecting age again, often if reports are written, the reports often are written to calculate someone's age as of the day the report is run. And that sometimes can be an opportunity that can impact your reporting outcomes, because many times someone might ask for a report about students enrolled 2 falls ago. And the report calculation may actually present the age the student today, even though you're looking at data from 2 prior academic periods. So again, these strategies we're going to work through today to help validate your outcomes. It's going to be a great experience. And thank you so much to our colleagues who were not able to get the data. Our colleague Joseph has been able to send that out to you, and then also a strategy for being accessed. So thank you for that update. And again, keep those conversations coming online, because we want to make sure you have access to this. If your organizations do not have the reports that we're going to discuss today built, that's okay. There's a lot of organizations that maybe have augments of them or something similar they can use as a baseline to develop later on and give to you. But we're going to talk about ways to evolve these so that way you can work with them to build them together. And we're going to talk about some examples and look at some examples today that will update, that you can update automatically to create the ability to evaluate those analytics. That way, if you are an organization that only has access to Excel, you don't have the tools like SAS or Python or R, or maybe you just don't have the programming knowledge, the time to spend because you're running your division and you're supporting your students, you're reporting your faculty and staff, that's okay. The goal here is to allow people to become independent and for you to automate and just add additional data when it's given to you, and the analytics carry on from prior calculations. So building the infrastructure at the beginning may take a little bit more time, but through these techniques and strategies that we're going to talk about together, we'll be able to copy and paste in additional data, and we're going to see analytics and tables change based off of doing it once. And that is going to be a very powerful opportunity. And the nice thing about this is we're just going to use Excel. And I like using Excel because Excel is a tool that most everyone has access to. There are a lot of different ways that individuals can get access to Excel, but it's a tool that's pretty ubiquitous. So that's why I have not focused. Some people have asked in the past why we haven't focused on tools like R and Python, and that's a pretty impressive programming language. And there are a lot of great benefits for using tools like that, especially if they're open source, which means that you can download them, access them for free. But I look at using something like Excel because Excel is extremely powerful, and the analytics and the abilities that Excel has advanced internally have been able to satisfy the need of many of us that are in the industry. So that's one of the reasons why we're focused so heavily on Excel. Anyways, let's dive into some data. I'm so excited to dive into this data together because this is so crucial. When I think of adult education and data structures, I think that every organization needs to have 2 reports at least two reports that describe or are written about an academic period or a semester. And these two reports need to have a similar theme, but different ways of developing them. So the first report that I always think is so crucial for any organization to have handy is an enrollment report. Who are the students enrolled in your program? And that is something that you need to have developed. And it doesn't always have to have all the bells and whistles and all the data elements we're going to talk about today, but at least an unduplicated report of students that are in your program. So when I reference the word unduplicated, when I reference the term unduplicated, if we look at this sheet on data one, what this is a fake data set. So I've created some random data, and I just put some years in here. And this could be semesterly, this could be yearly, this could be an academic year, it could be a reporting year. The timeline is important, but you want to make sure that it's consistent. These are your student IDs, and I just put student ID 1, but your organization might have J00093886. There's lots of different types of student IDs, but every student has one unique ID. What that means is that one ID is not assigned to 3 students, for example, that every person has one ID, sort of like a social security number. Your social security number is never assigned to multiple people. In this situation, we're going to see that in this report, and I've put a couple hundred students in here, so that way we could replicate analytics that are similar to what we would see in the real life. That here we have 998 students. The leading row there has a field, and we have almost 1,000 students in this report. But the nice thing about this is that this is unduplicated, meaning no row is ever going to have the same student listed twice. And this, in essence, gives you an ability to rapidly look at this and say, I know I should have 998 students in my program right now because I know them, I know what they're doing. But for some reason, a report is showing up, and maybe if that number is different, that's a great way to do an immediate validation on your population. And that's why having this type of report is so crucial to your success, and being able to work with your reports coordinators, being able to work with your programmers to be able to run this report either independently or being able to ask someone to run it for you and then send it to you. So that way you can know at any given time, whether it's monthly, whether it's semesterly, whether it's the beginning of a new course or a group of courses, you can do a check on the number of students you have by a enrollment report. And that's why an unduplicated enrollment report is going to be something that is going to help you excel on your program. And for those that have this type of report, fantastic. But there are still organizations, and we have new administrators that are involved with adult education. And that's why this type of discussion is a broad spectrum, because there's covering people that are tenured and they know how it works. They are tenured in their position. They know it, and they feel good, and they've been able to do this for a while. But then also we have those that are starting out in this career, and they are new to it. So being able to work with your reports coordinators, your administrators, to get an unduplicated report is going to be crucial for your success in here. So right now we just passed our quarter hour checkpoint. I always love to see how people are doing. Can I get some feedback in the chat just to make sure we're all here? Are we feeling good so far? I see Diane has been able to get her data, which is great, but I always like to check on our colleagues across the state and make sure that we're all here together. And if you just write a hello in the chat and tell me how you're feeling, I always like to see that as well, because I love this to be interactive, and I love for all of us to grow together. We do not always have to have semester-long courses for us to be able to do quick analytics. Awesome, great, getting some great feedback. And I'm so excited about this too. I'm so excited to work with everyone. Okay, great. So nothing's too hard so far. Fantastic. Thank you, Dawn. Thank you, Ty. Appreciate this feedback. And again, I'm always willing to advance and change too. I always want to get better to be able to provide access and knowledge for our general community to advance. So it's fantastic. We're getting such great results. Hitting on the second bullet point here, running these reports can be time consuming. It can be a heavy lift for a programmer or a reports coordinator. Thank you, Breeze. Thank you so much. But once it's done once, often that code can be saved and they can run it again. Whatever student system you're using, that code can usually be saved and the report can be created again and again and again using those similar report fields. For example, you might be able to choose a semester like fall 2024, who's registered for the upcoming fall, or who's currently enrolled in the spring of 2024. Those could be fields that could be prompted, and they could vary depending upon what you need. Thank you so much, Celestia. Thank you so much. Fantastic, getting good feedback. So hopefully nothing's screaming at us too far. Awesome. So I have a great question from Corinne. How do we recommend handling students that come and grow from the program and have continuous enrollment? I think that's what I'm hearing from our colleague Corinne. And in that situation, what I always recommend, especially when you have, I call that sort of student cyclicality. That's the way that I interpret. So they start and they're here for 2 weeks and they're no longer here and they withdraw, or they no longer can come because of family situations or whatever type of situations. I always recommend getting these reports, and I call it a census date. And getting these reports either sent to you or created on a census date allow you to take snapshots of your enrollment at key periods. So Corinne, whether that is the first day of every month or the first Monday of every month, that will allow you to get this report and you keep it in a repository, you keep it in a saved location somewhere. So if you need to go back and look at it, you're able to see how did that enrollment change from Monday of the 1st of January to the first Monday of February. So getting those census dates are very important. I also recommend, Corinne, that you get you work with your reports coordinator at your organization to get a copy, and no, not get a copy, to get a copy of this type of report at the date that they have to report to the Department of Education. Being able to work with that calendar, and they have a calendar, all your reports coordinators at all of your organizations, whether you are district, state, whether you're at a college, they all have calendars that they have to abide by to send data to the Department of Education. Knowing those calendar dates is also crucial for getting a copy of this report so you can look at this and you can reflect on the population to make sure that it's consistent. And then hopefully that will help you combat the confusion or the difficult situation of students that come back and forth. They're here and then they go, and then they're here and then they go. Getting these reports organized and sent to you on a calendar. But excellent question, Corinne. Fantastic. So building these reports can be difficult, but I don't want to say difficult, they'd be time consuming. But the strategy with this is that when you get these reports built and you work with these reports coordinators, you don't have to build everything we're going to talk at once. Often it's nice, you're very welcome. Often it's nice to work in small baby steps that we don't need. You don't want to write sometimes to a reports coordinator or a programmer and say, I need a report with 25 fields and it has to be semester. It has to be able to run by semester and filter by ESOL versus ABE at different functioning levels. That could be sometimes a little overwhelming, and that might be met with just natural anxiety from the programmer. So often I like to start in baby steps, and that's the way we're building this webinar today. We're working through baby steps. So let's look at this outcome at the bottom. We have the first four fields are basic information. This should be relatively simple for a reports coordinator for you to work through. That first field of year semester, it could be the 2022-23 academic year, or it could be just a semester. And that is a filterable field that your reports writers can use to key. The next field is student ID. That's never going to change. Once they get a student ID once, they should never change again from your organization. And most times, knock on wood, the first name and last name usually don't change very much. So usually that's pretty static as you progress, as student progresses through your organization and through your programs. And then date of birth, that's usually a pretty standard field. And then I noticed there I have that YYYMMDD. That's just a fancy way of saying the format of the data. And there's lots of different ways to format data. And why do I like date of birth better than I like age? Is because I often worry, because I've seen situations where reports are written and they're run 3 years after the academic year, but someone comes in, they're new to the job, and they're like, hey, I need to see an enrollment report from fall 2022. But the age by itself could be the age as of the day the report was written. That happens very often. So I like to have the date of birth and the age as well. So if you can get both, that's great. But date of birth, we may want to go back and calculate the age as of the first day of that semester, especially if you're doing historical student analytics. So keeping that in mind, we're going to talk about how to do that today. So we'll call these this baseline student demographic data. Name, first name, last name, student ID, the period, the academic year, the semester, and then the date of birth. Those are going to be pretty consistent fields that you're going to see across the student level report. So in this situation, we're going to pop over here and we're going to say, gosh, this field, the date of birth it's often they call it a text field, but we're not going to get into semantics of the way that Excel presents data, but it looks like text data. And do not worry about that red block there. Do not worry about that. That is called a formula. And long story short, we're going to talk about how to apply this formula, to a calculation so you can actually calculate the age of the individual. So that's going to be part of this discussion today is we're going to use a little bit of calculations, a little bit of coding, and do not get fearful of it because I promise you we're going to brace it together and then you're going to see that it's not so bad because I've done that heavy lifting for you. So the nice part about this is that in this Excel, you will be able to drop in that formula directly together. So I'm going to do two things. I'm going to take the formula just in case it's not easy for you. I'm going to drop it in the chat so that way you have a copy of this formula in the chat. So if you want to keep it in a special little book, then you can do that. And I have a little repository of formula that I like to use that I can change. And if you don't see that, that's okay. We're going to work through this together. So in this situation, I'm going to drop open this Excel here, and you're going to see that the reports coordinator, the reports writer, gives you date of birth in this format of 1969 02 27. So this person was born on February 27th, 1969. But this is not something that is very user-friendly for calculations. We want to convert this to a month, day, year. And often I've heard from individuals that say, my team member, they don't have the ability because of the limitations of an enterprise potentially to convert, but if they don't, that's okay. The nice part about that is you take that Excel formula that I've already typed up for you, and you drop that in. We're just going to drop that into this value here. So we're going to drop it in right here. I thought it was. Let's do it. Okay, maybe not. Yes, I am. So there we go. So I'm going to drop it in. So I'm not going to write it because this is not about writing the formulas. We want to be able to add these formulas directly in. You're going to see here that I defaulted this to a field of A2. So hopefully we all can see that blue A2 that's there. And it's showing to this 2022, 2023. I just did that as a generic default. For us, we're going to change everywhere it says A2, we want to change it to the field of E2. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to just click on that A. I'm going to hit back and hit an E. So I changed that to an E. I'm going to change this one from an A2 to an E2. And I'm going to change this one from an A2 to an E2. And that's the nice thing, is that if you have these formulae, you can use the same context of these formulae to apply them to any type of Excel. And then when I hit enter and I change those A's to E's, now it takes this field here and converts it to something that Excel likes and we all know a lot better. So we took this and we converted it to 22769 with the backslashes. And that is a great handy tool we can use. So if that is something that is difficult, do not worry. You can practice that later. And I've given you a formula for it. Here's what it's supposed to look like. So the nice part is that when we actually zoom in on this, I'm going to zoom on this a little bit more. If I go down to the bottom right, does everyone, I hope, see how my cursor changes to from a fat white plus to a skinny plus, fat, skinny. When I double click, thank you, Ty. If you can't copy it from the chat, I've also put it here under data one updated. So if you have not seen it here, you can copy it directly from here. And you can also copy it here. So I've taken that for you. I put in the chat, depending upon who you are, you're very welcome, colleague and friend. You're very welcome. So here, if you are unable to copy from the chat, it's also on data one updated. But notice when I come down here and double click, I have now converted it from a field that is often used in state and federal reporting. That's why they have these fields in these formats, Y, year, month, day. And now we convert it into something that we can use. Awesome. I hope we are feeling good about that. And if you did not get that, you can select and then copy. Absolutely, Corinne. So if you want to come over here, you can copy it directly from this. On the second page, data one updated. I put this as a general A2, but this one here has it as the E2. It's already there. You can copy it directly from here and you can paste it directly into this cell here and you will have no issues. So again, that's going to be something you can do as well. And that's the nice part about keeping this. So if you don't have that accessibility or reports writer yourself, you can learn these techniques to do this and to be able to update this. So that's going to be something that I've seen very often is converting date of birth into something that's more user-friendly. If you see here, I went ahead and did that calculation for you. So if you missed it, you can just click on this and you can see this calculation on data one updated. Awesome. Strong work, friends and colleagues. Strong work, friends and colleagues. Let us continue with our presentation, and I hope this is And I hope this is as enjoyable for you as it is for me. Um, so now this slide just said, here's what you can do. You can replace A2, and it gives you direction to replace A2 to wherever your data field is located. So if you're ever given the date of birth in this year in this format, you can update it to something that is Excel user friendly. So here was just this is something that I always like to do, because often that's the difference between a way a programmer might interpret data, the way they see data, and the way you, as a subject matter expert and a user, will use data in day-to-day knowledge and working. So now it begs the question: age of a student. How do we calculate the age of a student? Why is that sometimes so difficult? I reflected on the difficulties because sometimes it's the time that the reports run, sometimes it's the census date, but we always want to know the age of a student because that's used when we report, when it's reported to the NRS. It's a great validation strategy. They group students by age. So often when we write these reports, these calculations, you may want to know the age of a student as of a date or as of today. So do not fret. Do not fret. I have done these calculations for you. This is not something that's easily delivered in Excel, surprisingly enough. It's not easily delivered in coding, but these are two formulae that you can use to calculate the age of a student as of today, which is this first one right here, the age of a student as of today, or the age of a student as of a certain day. And we'll talk about how to do that in our next practice, So I'm going to go ahead and we're going to apply this. Let's go ahead. I went back one slide. I'm going to go ahead and apply this in our Excel. So we're going to drop our Excel. So hopefully we are going to be able to see our data two. So in here, we are building from data one to data two. So notice if you're working with your reports coordinators, your reports writers, if you don't have a report like this, let's start with the basics. Ask for one with just these first fields, and let's advance this together with those individuals and figure this out and get access to this. So here, I just said, let's say there's a semester begin date of 1/1/2024. This could be a class begin date. This could be a census date at the beginning of the month. But I always recommend being able to calculate consistently semester upon semester for each student, because that way you can be consistent with your analytics and you can see those trends. So we are going to calculate the age of the student as of today, and then the age of the student as of a certain date, and we're going to put that semester begin date in here. Again, do not fret, because if you cannot grab the Excel formula directly out of the chat, I'll put it in there, but it's also here on page 2. If you come in here and you click on H2 or I2, you can come up here and copy it directly. You can highlight and copy it directly. That's something you can do if you want to get access to it, but I'm also going to drop it in the chat, and you can paste it in this document to calculate the age as of today. So let me go ahead and do that here. Okay, so I put it in the chat for us, trying to be very interactive, and I'm going to drop this in here as well under our data too, so we can see how that age calculates. So here, I'm going to say the age of today. Whoops, that was a little bit big, a little bit bigger than I expected. So I'm going to paste this as some text up here. And notice here it's defaulting to A2. I want to use the new date of birth field that we just calculated, because Excel likes this to calculate. So I want to use F2, and I'm going to replace A2 with F2. And when I hit enter, I get that this student's age is 55 as of today. As of today, ladies and gentlemen, as of today. So I replaced what was given, that A2 value, with the F2, and that's going to be the age that we calculated here. So it's in that format of month, month, day, day, year, 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 with the backslashes. Now, if I want to apply this across all of my students, I just come down here and I double click at the bottom right, and this formula updates, and notice it updates by highlighting the data tab of the field that it's using in the calculation. So here, this blue is highlighted because it's using the date of birth from the third student, Reginald McIntyre, and then Rebecca Castro. And then if we go down, we will see that it's always using a field that's reflective of that student. So that's how you calculate the age as of today. Fantastic way to validate the data that you're given is actually the age that you would expect it to be. But let's say we want to calculate the age as of a certain date. What was the student's age as of the beginning of the semester, which is so important to have? That census date is so important to have. Let's go ahead and try that one out. So I'm going to come over here. I'm going to copy this formula for just purposes of being quick. If you also want to keep this in your repository, I've taken this and I've expanded this in a picture format for you to be able to use, and also given you the formula here. So I've given you the formula in lots of places. This is going to be your repository, your ability to build your coding. So if you are in a restricted environment or you don't have readily accessible outcomes to be able to calculate that, don't hold you up. So we'll be able to do it ourselves. I'm going to come over here and paste it directly in. And here it says, oh, wow, why is it 54? Who can help me out? And we see here the ages are different. Why do you think we're going to run into that problem, colleagues? Does anyone see potentially why we are going to have a difference in age? If anyone wants to let me know why they think we have a difference in age, we're calculating the age, and the age should be pretty easily delivered. But as we see, the student's birthday was February. The student just recently had a birth date. So the age at the beginning of the semester when the student started the program was 54, but the student had a birthday in February. So now the student's 55. And that can have a change in the way you are binning. We'll learn a term called binning, the way they're grouped in your NRS tables. So if one thing I can impress upon you in this basic data outline is that age is one of the most strategic fields that really have to be understood about your students. So when you calculate them, these are great ways to validate whatever you were given is what you want it to be. And again, that's going to be the development between you and the reports writers. How are we all feeling so far about the age and about the conversion of the date of birth? We're wrapping a lot of different topics in here. Okay, awesome, Don. Fantastic. Thank you so much. I love to hear some feedback. I hit these milestones and want to make sure that I'm not losing anyone. And awesome. Great. Thank you so much, Celestia. Great. Good to hearing some good feedback. Awesome. Okay, so no, not lost anyone so far. Good. We haven't lost anyone on the webinar either. We've actually gained 2 people, so that's wonderful. I love when people get excited about data, and I love being able to work with individuals to empower them to be successful with it as well. So okay, so if you lost it, if you lost the age in the first box, the nice thing is you can just put it back in there again. So you could come back over here to your data 2, and you could copy this. So I'm just going to right click and hit copy. And if you come back over here, and I'm just going to delete this one, and I'm going to control V, or you can right click and paste. And now you can paste it in. So if you lost it, you can copy it and paste it back in again. And again, you can always validate by hitting F2. If you hit F2 on any field, it highlights whatever data you're using in the calculation. So wonderful statement and question, Lenore. Thank you for bringing that up. Now we're going to move on to data 3. So don't get too excited. This is going to be our data 3. And we're going to talk about not only now have we created the age, we also know that for our NRS outcomes that they group our students based on their ages. And these are termed bins. So if you ever hear of a bin or a group, those are synonyms that are used to group based on a range or a category. So the reason why I've written this calculated field code in the way that it has is it's going to parallel what you're going to see in your NRS tables. So I always like to reflect on how is that data not only going to be used at my organization, but how is it going to manifest, or where am I going to see it somewhere else? And that's the reason why I try to reflect and build structures with my subject matter experts so they can use this for validation later on. So these bins, age grouping bins, are going to be used they're the same groupings you're going to see in NRS tables. So I say they're going to be used there. You want to be able to validate. Let's go ahead and do them together. So notice here with that first student, we saw the age differed, and that's why it's so important to understand the way that age is coded. Because for us, we will see a difference. A student will be coded differently between the age of 54 and 55. And I did this purposely. A student that is coded and aged at 55 will have a different bin than a student who's 54. They're going to be at a different location. So we're going to work through that together in our data 3, So, okay, great comment. Wonderful. Okay, I'm glad everyone is getting it. Yes, I totally agree. So there's comment that this can seem overwhelming, and I definitely understand that. It's not a quick fix, but one of the reasons why I love what we do at IP Day is that we record this and we make it public forever. So I don't teach anything. I don't talk about anything that's not already public knowledge, but I try to take everything that I've learned through a public environment and through my own education, through my own development, and I curtail it towards what we see in adult ed. And that's my goal, is to take all of this. And I don't ever want to impress upon people that it's impossible to do this, but it's not always quick to do it. But once you practice, or you work with each other, you work with us, we can always help as well. So the goal here is not to learn everything about coding and everything about the nomenclature and all your NRS outcomes and so forth, but it's to make us familiar with them so we can be on the alert for when we see them. So that's a great point. So thank you for bringing that up. So in this situation, we're going to see here that we have this age group, age bins. And what happens is they take a student and their age and they group them to a certain category, and that's how you see NRS outcomes calculated. So in here, you'll see here that I'm going to use the age as of a date. Wink, wink, age as of a date, the day the semester began, the date that your reports coordinator submitted data to the state of Florida. This date, this age of a date is going to be very important to you. So that's what I highly encourage you to always have. So I'm going to go here and I'm going to copy this formula with all these funny parentheses. So all these parentheses at the end are crucial to have because order of operations is important, and we see them in coding as well. And I'm just going to right click and I'm going to paste that in here. And notice this long, nasty looking formula, don't be worried about it. It can be used to group this individual based off of their age. And long story short, this is just a statement that says if the age falls at a certain threshold, label this that group. So here, because the individual's age as of today, as of that date of the beginning of the semester is 54, they get grouped in the category of 45 to 54. Again, I want to double click and I want to add that. And now we can see that this applies for every single individual that is a student in this population. I don't want to have to write this code for every single person. That's why a lot of this can be automated and you can save these codes. But also what we're going to expand upon in our upcoming webinars is that we're going to talk about creating tables. So all you have to do is paste your new data in and all the codes automatically apply. And that makes life so much easier for subject matter experts and even for many that are balancing multiple roles. And I'm sure a lot of us on here have multiple roles in our organizations. You are the teachers, you're the mentors, you're the therapists, you're the directors, you're the reports coordinators, you're the analyst, you're serving multiple capacities. And that's why we're trying to build this tool set so that way you have it for later on. And again, if you were not able to do this code, this has been updated for you in data 3 updated. So we're making great progression. Again, hopefully we're seeing how this data structure is evolving. This data structure has changed from when we first started with just these first couple fields here, and now we've added on these fields here. And we did this ourselves. So even if we can't do this at the reporting level, at the student enterprise level, whoever's programming and coding, there's a lot that we can do just ourselves by getting the date of birth of a student. And we're going to see that this right here is going to be something we can perpetually use as we get these reports consistently. Now, what we're going to look at is we're going to look at race of our students. And well, this is an interesting one. So race and ethnicity. Race and ethnicity of our students is something that is collected at the federal level. And it's connected to the state level too. And it's used, I'm sure, in grants that you're writing for your organization to bring in funds. It's used in a lot of different places. Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot to go about why the bins are grouped this way. You'll see that there are 6 age group bins. I'm sorry, I jumped ahead. I got so excited. And those age group bins are in 6 different categories: 16 through 18, 19 through 24, 25 through 44, 45 through 54, 55 through 59, and 60 plus. And if you look at your NRS tables, if you look at definitions derived from or provided from the NRS and even Octave, you'll see these age bins, these groupings pretty consistently used. So that's why they've been shown here in this presentation. Hopefully, we're all seeing the relevance, and what I'm trying to show here is building tools that reflect outcome measurements that'll be used down the road. Race is and ethnicity. So ethnicity is traditionally defined as being Hispanic, yes or no. And then race, there are different races that are collected at our organizational level. Usually that's grouped into American Indian, Alaska Native, Asian, Black or African American, Hispanic, Latino as an ethnicity. More than one race is not usually collected. Usually we don't say that, but some do, but we'll talk about that. Native Hawaiian or Pacific Islander, and then there's the white category. So there is a hierarchy because the NRS only allows us to report an outcome, but often our organizations collect the information about the individual races and ethnicity. So for example, your organization, when you bring a student in, you might ask a student at the time that they apply or they come in, are you Hispanic, yes or no? Do you identify as white, yes or no? Do you identify as African American, yes or no? Some might actually ask, are you more than one race? That one I don't usually like asking because you can drive that outcome. You can drive that outcome, and we'll talk about how to do that. So in the hierarchy of race that's used at the DOE level, there's three different tiers, I guess you call them, but they're not hierarchy meaning one's better than the other. It's just the way that the process works. So if a student is identifies as Hispanic, they come in, they say, yes, I'm Hispanic, then the student for the race outcome is always Hispanic, regardless if they are Black or African American and they identify as Native Hawaiian and maybe they identify as white, that they are categorized as Hispanic. So that's the first tier. If your student comes in and they identify as Asian and white, that is two races, then they are multiracial. Then they are multiracial, which means that they are more than one race, which is going to be that fifth bullet down, more than one race. So that's going to be a code that we can use as well. So this is an important one that you're going to want to work with your reports coordinators for because every organization has a different way that they've set up the holding of this data. Some organizations don't have this broken down into individual fields. Some organizations have one outcome and you select either you select either Hispanic, you select either American Indian, you select multiracial. So getting to understand the way that your organization holds race is so crucial to the development of your data because this is reported at the NRS level and it's used in a lot of different situations. I bet you're using it with your grants. I know that our grants division uses this very heavily because it reflects, are you reflecting and servicing the population in your community? There's a lot of things this is used for. So looking at this data, I'm going to pull in data table 4. We're going to see that I've added this field here. So when you work with your reports coordinators and your developers, this is key that you not only understand the way that you want it reported, and hopefully you remember the organizational structure. I recommend that very highly. It's not ultimate and final. Don't to say because Mike said at at the IPDAY webinar that we have to do it this way, that we have to. No, there could be other utilities that maybe you want to see race very differently. You may want to see the individual races. For example, you might want to see was the student Black, uh, or African American. I'll just abbreviate for purposes. And this could be a yes or a no. This could be a yes or a no. You might want to see another field. You might want another field. I'm just updating this. You don't have to do it, of Hispanic. And this could be a yes or a no. Your organization may collect it and store that data in this type of infrastructure. However, it's important that you ultimately have this one field that you can identify as race, ethnicity, whatever you want to call it, that says this student Reina is Hispanic Latino. This student Jasper Campos identifies as white. This student Sutton Waters identifies as more than one race. And this is what you're going to be using to help you hopefully identify how your data is going to look at the federal and the state level. So getting this understood and reported correctly is something that's usually not a quick task. It's not a bad task. It's not hard, but it's something that your thought process has to manifest its way into the person that's coding for this so they understand how it's going to be utilized. And then you also can understand how the data is stored and the origin of how it's stored in your system. Again, it may help to look at this code that the person's using, and then also the raw data that's used to develop this code. So in this situation at my organization, this is a calculated field outcome similar to what we're doing, but ours has in there that the student identifies as yes or no for all those different categories of race and ethnicity. So often just to help validate, I'll put in reports all those categorical outcomes by student, and then I'll put in this one calculated field. So again, if you have any more questions about race and ethnicity, let us know. I'll be more than happy to dive into it and work together so that way you can understand this. But again, this hierarchy of the way that the calculated field can be categorized and organized is going to be very helpful to reflect the population of data the same way that you're going to see this federally. So let us continue with race, gender. So the reason why gender is so important, this is something that at the NRS level, a student, in order to be reported as an outcome, has to be either male or female, not validated. But there's no part at the NRS level to report students that do not report their gender as male or female. So definitely understand the infrastructure of your student application process, the way the student gets admitted to your program, and determine whether or not gender is a required field. And then also work with your reports coordinators to determine what happens if a student does not disclose their gender, or you don't obtain it at the time that they apply, or you get their student information into your system. Because that could be part of the incongruences that I've worked and I've seen with organizations. And they'll say, I think that we had 500 students, but at the NRS, we're only showing 473. And one of the most common situations that happens is that students that don't have a gender disclosed, or that do not disclose their gender, which is an institutional directive, they may say, nope, we're not going to require gender as disclosed. Then that student may fall out of your NRS outcomes. And so that's something to think about, is how is gender used? So I'm curious to learn if maybe those that could write to me, do you know, I'll have to say yes or no, whether gender is required that when the student comes in during their onboarding process. Do you require that they select male, female, or is it something that is optional, or is there ability to say, I choose not to disclose? I'd love to learn from our colleagues about how your organization, there's no right or wrong answer. There's no right or wrong answer. What do you know? And if you don't know, that's okay too. And hopefully this is using, excellent. This is giving you some ideas of what you can do. Excellent. Thank you so much for that. So we're seeing so individuals, I see some organizations are allowed to select male, female, or another population. Be very careful, because try to understand what happens with the reporting when a student discloses as other, or not any, choose not to disclose, how that manifests its way federally, because that could be one of the reasons why you're seeing distinctions between federal outcomes, state outcomes, and your own outcomes. Okay, so I see that some organizations have set up critical errors, that if they do not have a male or female marker, that is a critical error. So I see, and then people don't know, and that's okay if you don't know. That's completely fine. Do not worry about that. Now you can use this as an impetus to figure this out. And then figure it out at your own organization. So work with your reports coordinators and do your best to understand how is gender collected. And here is an example on our data 4 of what you would expect to see, something that shows male or female on gender. And in this situation, you'll see that there is no unknowns, and I've paralleled that because that data falls out of your federal and your federal outcomes. So this is something that you would expect to see. So we've started building this table from a small data period. I mean, a small data set of 5 fields. Now we've expanded, and we're adding a lot of information that is going to be very helpful for us to reflect on situations as our populations are advancing or changing and so forth. Excellent. So you just checked, and okay, so now we have people that just checked, and now they are able to bypass. They don't have to fill out the gender field. So that's another situation, and that's the bridge that we're trying to encourage, that we all figure out what is happening that you expect, but then what is being reported often are not the same. No, I don't want to say often. Sometimes are not the same. Sometimes are not the same, and that's why you want to develop these relationships, ask these tough questions, understand the best that you possibly can. I love when people that are subject matter experts in my organization come and say, hey, Mike, why is this reporting this way? Or I just did a validation with our HCM team, and they had a question. They said, why does this employee show up this way in the demographics outcomes? And we dove into it together. So ask these great questions, engage in a positive manner, and learn to the best of your abilities. And if you ever have any kind of follow-up questions, feel free to reach out to us at IPDay. And be more than happy to entertain and give you some good response and thoughtful answers to that. We're continuing on, making progress. So work with your reports coordinators, understand the gender, get them to put it on a report for you, and that way you can look. And then next, ask if the gender is missing, or it's unknown, or it's not male or female. What happens to that population? What happens the way that they are when they are reported? So we are getting closer to our time, but I'm going to ask that we look at these fields. We're just on that last table. Program field. um, identify whether your student is ABE or ESOL. And people might say, well, Mike, what happens if they are both ABE and ESOL? So in that same hierarchy, they default to ESOL. So if a student is ABE and ESOL, they're enrolled in both programs, then default to ESOL. However, if they're ABE and ESOL, you might want to have a field of ABE, yes, ESOL, yes, and then maybe a reporting program field. You might want to call it reporting program field, and it would default to ESOL, which is the lowest. So that's something to think about. And I will show us what this one looks like here on data table 5. So here we see that each student is categorized as ESOL or ABE, and that's important too, because remember the way the NRS looks at it, that they are not both. They're not both. They're ABE or ESOL, and they default to ESOL if they are both. So hopefully that's used then to help validate your next outcome. And this one is so important, and this is one of the biggest takeaways that I highly encourage subject matter experts to do. That the entry functioning level is a calculation. It is complex, but it's not difficult. It's just complex. And we want to validate the entry functioning level of a student based on their pre-tests. And there's a lot of situations and ways that you can do to validate this. And I always encourage, even though there's a lot, if this could be done up at front, you will see that the entry functioning level is predicated based off of the student's program of study. So here, the ESOL predicates the EFLs, use EFL. The term EFL for entry functioning level is ESL level something. If they're ABE, they're ABE level some number. So in here, I often recommend taking a little bit of work at the beginning and either validating as much as you possibly can or random sampling and say that I, as a subject matter expert, believe that this student's functioning level should be, this one should be ESL level 1. And you want to work with your reports coordinators that submit your data to the state of Florida and say, can you please give me a field, the field that you report for the student's entry functional level, because this is so critical. And remember, everyone's always learning, they're always growing. And this is a way to validate that EFL, because this cascades into so many other areas of adult education, state and federal reporting. So I recommend that as a strategy is go through each one of your students or do a random sample and determine based off of those pre-tests what you believe they should be, and then get your reports coordinator to validate these outcomes on your student level data and say, put that field that you're reporting to the DOE on what that entry functioning level is, that EFL, and add that to this data set. So again, that's just a summary of that recommendation. If people have other recommendations on how to validate EFLs, I'd love to learn about them. I'd love if you drop them in the chat in the last couple minutes that we'd have, and we can share that with our colleagues. But I love to hear how you validate EFLs, and they're complex. They're based off test records. They're based off when you take the test and the pre-test, when the course starts, and so forth. That's not really the discussion of today. There is other resources you can use. If that's part of it, please let us know if we can provide those to you. But again, validating what you believe they should be versus what is reported is key and crucial in this, what we're trying to emphasize today. So again, that's just something I like to do. I like to color code and so forth and use these strategies to go forward. This is a summary of what we covered. So this is how the report has developed, and this might be something you can use as a template to request from your reports coordinators or your programmers, taking a snapshot and say, can I have X, Y, and Z fields, and then help them understand the definition of these fields so you can build your own reports. And this is what the report ultimately looked like, but this is going to be the same thing that you see in your Excel file. And lastly, I want to thank you for joining us today at our IPDay Tech Tuesday. We have another great session coming up. And in the meantime, we have a survey that's posted for you that we'd love to hear your feedback about. We have a survey coming up another follow-up session coming up on March 26th. And that's going to be mastering and harnessing the power of Excel tables. And that's going to be with me. Again, I hope you don't get tired of hearing it, but I love showing people how to do it. And that's going to be a way we could start with this and automate processes from semester to semester, from month to month. So that way you don't have to do it yourself. But again, that's going to be March 26th for our Tech Tuesday. So definitely be on the lookout for that. We appreciate everyone. And I appreciate how much you all do, because you're changing lives every day. And we are here to support you and your efforts. So thank you so much, and appreciate everyone being here and present today. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Yeah. Well, I'm glad we shortened 10 years. Oh, you're awesome. You're awesome. Thank you, Diane. Yes. Oh, thank you so much, all. Thank you, Breeze. You're welcome, Breeze.